Hey, what's going on, chat? So today I noticed that people are having a lot of trouble resolving Falling Star, Icathian Rain, and Reflexive triggers, and they don't really understand what's going on. So we're gonna go ahead and make a video explaining everything on how to properly resolve your triggers and use Falling Star and Icathian Rain properly, and how not to get screwed on this. So knowing how to do all this is going to be very important as we all prepare for the Houston regional. And yeah, if you don't know how this works, somebody can easily just trick you, and things are just going to go very poorly for you. Or they might not even be trying to trick you, honestly. Like, they might just not know, and then something's going to happen, and then they they'll say something, and it's like, "Oh, okay, cool. So I'm gonna do this," and you guys call a judge over, and it finds out that they were wrong. So it's not always because people are trying to do bad things, but they might just not know. So it's very important to make sure that you know how this works, so that people are playing the game correctly. Yourself and your friends. So yeah, that's why we're gonna need to go into this topic. And I know that this can be a pretty complicated topic, so I'm gonna do my best here and give you a handful of examples, so we can cover as many bases as possible, and maybe get you thinking about how you can play with and or against this card effectively. Also, make sure just be prepared to pause and rewind, because this could get very complicated here. I'm gonna be doing my best to go from simple and get more and more complicated as we go. And we're gonna start off with just going over some definitions or how a reflexive trigger works. So a reflexive trigger happens when a card says the word "do this," right? So Icathian Rain reads, "Do this 6 times, deal 2 damage to a unit, or deal two to a unit," and you can choose different units, right? So what that means is, when a reflexive trigger happens, so it says do this 6 times, that means there are going to be 6 reflexive triggers. And when a reflexive trigger happens, it creates an ability that goes on the chain. And when an ability goes on the chain, the targets must be chosen immediately, right when they go on the chain. And at this point, valid targets must be chosen without exception. And this is why the retreat stuff happens the way it does. And just like any other chain, the ability that last went on the chain is resolves first. So the order that you choose everything is very important. So you'll just have to tell your opponent, like, I want this to deal, I want to deal 2 damage here first, and then 2 damage there, after that. And we'll show why that's relevant in our final example, and how you can maybe beat an hourglass, but that's like a whole nother thing. You guys, you stay tuned to the end, because that's the most complicated example and it's very niche, but maybe it will come up. So the simplest example is falling star on 2 units, right? So let's say the opponent here has 2 units in their base. You're just gonna go ahead and play falling star, right? So let's say the opponent has no response. So what's gonna end up happening is that this will resolve. So by resolve, it means we're gonna put that in the trash, right? So these 2 falling stars that I'm going to put on the battlefield are going to represent our 2 reflexive triggers. I'm going to go ahead and put these on the battlefield, just like our Icathian Rains that I prepared for our example here. So we're also going to go ahead and put what order they're in, right? So this is the one here is going to say which uh, which reflexive trigger it is. So 1 means it was the first one to happen, and 2 is the second reflexive trigger, which means that the second reflexive trigger will be the first one to happen. So we're gonna go ahead and target. We have to choose targets in this way. The first one that went on the chain, we're gonna choose one, and the second one that went on the chain, we're gonna choose that one, right? And the other student. So what's gonna happen here is we're gonna resolve it in the proper order here. And now we see that this falling star here, the second the second reflexive trigger on the chain that we put, the most recent one that we put on the chain, will be resolving first. So as you see in this for the Raven Bloom student that is targeting it, it will take a 3 damage here. So you see a 3 right here, and so now that that has 3 damage on it, it will go ahead and get put in the trash because it's dead, and this reflexive trigger is completed. And now we have the other reflexive trigger, the first one that went on the chain, will go ahead and deal its 3 damage here and also trash that. And now the reflexive triggers are done, right? And our falling star will be in the trash. This is just in my hand for illustration. But so that's how the two reflexive triggers will resolve. They'll resolve one at a time, and you choose them as they go on the chain. The next example we have is if you have one only one unit as a target for your falling star here. So we're gonna go ahead and play this back. So just like last time, so we're gonna go ahead and have this falling star resolve, right? So we're gonna have two reflexive triggers again, and but the difference here is that there's only one target on the opponent's base and two targets in our base, right? So what we can do here is actually just have both of these triggers go to the Raven Bloom student. So what's going to end up happening here is that the second trigger will resolve first, like we did last time, and that'll deal 3 damage to the student, right? So that student will go to the trash here. And now that that student's in the trash, this ability is gonna go ahead and resolve. But the ability is just deal 3 damage to a unit, and now that the unit is gone, its original target is gone. It's just not gonna do anything. So what's gonna end up happening is that it's just gonna resolve, and that's gonna be the end of it. So that's what happens when there's only one unit. You can just choose both reflexive triggers to target the same unit, and even if it dies, the targets remain the same throughout the resolution, right? So it doesn't really matter that that unit died. Okay, so now this is the main one that gets this example is the main example that gets most people, and we're gonna go ahead and demonstrate that right now. We're gonna go and put our Raven Bloom student back in the base on the other side. And let's say, so we play our Falling Star here, right? So Falling Star has not yet resolved. So because Falling Star is not yet resolved, the reflexive triggers are not on the chain, and we have not chosen any targets for this Falling Star yet. So the opponent will have an opportunity to react to this spell on the chain. And now we're going to go ahead and play retreat on the other side. So this retreat will target the Ravenbloom student, right? So assuming that this resolves with no trouble, what's going to end up happening is that this student is going to go back to the hand. The retreat resolves, channel a rune and all that. So now the only thing on the chain is this falling star. So now this falling star must resolve, right? So we're gonna go ahead and resolve the falling star. It'll get put to the trash, but that'll put our two reflexive triggers back on the chain. So the targets must be chosen immediately. So you see we currently have two Ravenbloom students in the base here. So what's going to end up happening is that like we said earlier, when an ability goes on the chain, the targets must be chosen immediately, and valid targets must be chosen without exception, right? So we can't just choose to do nothing with these deal 3 damage to a unit. That's essentially what these two abilities read. So we must choose a target, right? So we're gonna choose a target in order. We're gonna put the first one onto, let's say, one of our Ravenbloom students, right? So what some people will say is that you have to do it on the other one since that one's gonna die. No, that's a load of shit. So what you can actually do is actually just target the same Raven Bloom student so both of them don't die. So what's going to end up happening, just like in our example with the first, with just one unit on the enemy's battlefield or enemy's base, the second trigger will resolve first, which means our Raven Bloom student will die. Just gonna put it back in hand. It's dead. It's in the trash. We'll just leave it in the trash. So it's dead. But now that this first trigger has no used to have a target, but no longer has a target, a valid target, it's just going to do nothing. So this trigger disappears, and we've now resolved that falling star. Okay, so that should be uh, you know, I was about to say that should be straightforward. It is not straightforward for a lot of people, and we need to make sure that we are resolving this properly. So here we are. An interesting thing you can do in that situation. Let me go ahead and put this back. Here's a little bit of counterplay for you. Some bonus. So let's go ahead and put this back here. Let's go ahead and pretend that this retreat on the board is a Raven Bloom student as well. So you're gonna go ahead and play your Falling Star, and the opponent does their retreat again, so it's back in hand. So now that there's no unit there, we go back to what we had earlier. So because the Falling Star has been played, what ends up happening is that these two Ravenbloom students actually gain a might. Oops. They actually gain a might here. So they're actually at 3 might each, right? Yeah. They're at 3 might apiece. And now we can put these triggers on the chain because we need to, right? 1 and 2. But what we can do is also play a Stupefy targeting our other third unit. And once this resolves, that'll make these Ravenbloom students each 4 might. And then now we can resolve the falling stars, and that will not be lethal anymore. So what's going to end up happening is that there's going to be 3 damage on this one, and then um, that'll go back into, that's the ability being resolved. And then now there'll be 3 damage on here, and then it'll be 4 might, so it actually lives. And now we've resolved the falling stars and actually kept our units alive. So that's an example of why it's important to really understand how these reflexive triggers work and how they resolve. We were able to, have our falling star resolve, and because it was resolved, our Raven Bloom students will gain 1 might each, and then we've played an additional spell to give them a second might, getting them out of reach of these reflexive triggers. So we've effectively saved our students, even if the opponent had the counterplay for the retreat. And who knows, that could come up. And when it comes up, it's going to be good. So there we have that specific interaction. Now we're going to be going into Icathian Rain. Icathian Rain is a lot more straightforward here. So I've put these already, these Icathian Rain reflexive triggers here already, just for illustration. So when you play the Icathian Rain, exactly the same thing is gonna happen, right? Um, so it says do this 6 times, and then right when this resolves, we're gonna have to target for all 6 immediately, right? So that's in the trash now. And now these go on the chain immediately, and we must target, right? So we're gonna go ahead and just target. You can target the same target multiple times, and like we said, and nothing really matters here. In that regard, like you're not just because it dies, it doesn't mean you have to target something else, right? So we're just gonna go ahead and select 3 each for both of these uh, both of these Ravenbloom students on our opponent's board, and the Ravenblooms. So Now that the targets have been selected, we're going to resolve them backwards. So the sixth trigger, which is the last trigger, is going to go ahead and deal 2 damage here to this Raven Bloom student. But now that it has 2 damage on it, it will go ahead and go into the trash. Now that these have no proper target, or these will resolve doing nothing. And the same thing is going to happen with the remaining 3, and we're going to have all of the triggers resolved there. And the same things apply pretty much across the board. The same way with Falling Star. So if opponent only has 1 unit and you Icathian Rain here, what's going to end up happening is your opponent will have an opportunity to respond with a reaction, because there's a spell on the chain, and they're going to receive priority here. So if the opponent plays a retreat targeting their student, putting their student back in the hand, what's going to end up happening is this Icathian Rain is going to resolve, and our all of our triggers go on the chain just like last time, 1 through 6. 6 different triggers go on the chain, and we must target immediately. And the most efficient way to deal with this is to just choose the same target for all 6 triggers, because we're choosing them all at the same time right when the chain happens. So these targets are locked in. There's 6 of them going straight for the same student, and the 6th trigger is going to resolve. The last trigger is going to resolve. Uh, that'll just go ahead and get rid of the Ravenbloom student, and the other triggers will just resolve but do nothing because their target is missing. You don't need to retarget this. Your second student gets to live another day, and that's just how that's going to work here. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back in my hand, back on the board. And let's go ahead and get rid of these arrows here. So the targets are chosen and locked on. That's very important to know. And we've also covered Icathian Rain and retreating. If the opponent retreats and then I have 2 units, I can keep 1 unit by just targeting the same one. Those are the probably like some of the more common examples. Uh, and we've shown you some counterplay. I'm gonna give you a more complicated example now. So let's go. Let's say we have these 2 units at battlefields, and let's say they have opponent has wink wink, a hidden card. It's always fucking hourglass. Let's go ahead and hide this for now. This hourglass thing is hidden. So let's say we have an Icathian Rain here, and we want to play around Hourglass. This is try and follow along. This is going to be a difficult one. So uh, the I think if you want the Yi dead, the most obvious answer is actually something like this, right? You're gonna go ahead and choose all 6 to Master Yi, because what's going to end up happening is this, right? You're going to go ahead and resolve one of them, the 6th one, and yeah, I'm going to just put them I'm just going to put them in base as they resolve. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good way to do it. So the 6th one will resolve, the last one that went on the chain, and that'll put 2 damage marked on it, right? You see the it's hard to see the 2 damage, but there's 2 damage right there. And now we're gonna go ahead and resolve the 5th one. And so there's 2 damage from the first one, and now there's 2 damage, or another 2 damage from the second one, right? So these abilities are still on the chain. So now the opponent will have an opportunity to respond with a reaction card. So we are going to flip the Zhonyas Hourglass right now. So the Hourglass gets flipped face up. Technically goes to base, but that's not really important. So the Hourglass is flipped up, right? And basically, the next time, whenever this resolves, this is going to die. Um, so this one will resolve. There'll be 6 damage marked on it, right? So now the Zhonya's Hourglass is going to trigger here. and then this will go back. It'll go in the trash. I'm just gonna do it. It's gone in the trash, and now Yi will be in base recalled. So what recall means is that we will put it back in the base, we will exhaust it, and we will also remove all the damage marked on it. And that's just a part of this is a part of resolving the Zhonyas. That's what the Zhonyas does. Let's see. Uh, yeah. Next time it would die, kill this instead. So it when you kill it, you're also just removing the damage marked on it, and then recall it exhausted. So we've recalled the Yi exhausted, and these three are still targeted onto it, right? So now we're gonna go ahead and resolve the what's it called? We're gonna go ahead and resolve the triggers like we did last time. We're gonna go ahead and put 2 damage on it. Excuse me. 2 damage on it from the third trigger, and 2 damage on it from the the second trigger here. And now if this resolves, it's gonna put 2 damage on it and it's gonna die. The opponent at this point will have a chance to respond. Oh, this is already resolved. The opponent will have a chance to respond with any reaction cards. Like for example, if they want to do an on guard targeting the Master Yi, they can actually get the Master Yi up to 8 might so that it stays alive. And because this will resolve excuse me. Let's go ahead and get rid of this so that resolves, and then this will resolve with 6 might or 6 damage, and it'll have 8 might, so it'll survive that. Uh, that is one example, but if they don't have the on guard, obviously the Yi just goes ahead and dies, right? So let's pretend no on guard, it will just die. So that's probably the simplest way to deal with that. Another one way you can get them off of both battlefields, I'm gonna show you. You can have the first mate in the base if you have a stupefy. We're gonna go ahead and just do some more complicated scenarios just to show you a little more in depth here, just to make sure that we all understand the concepts. So let's go ahead and start back at the beginning. So we've got Master Yi, and we've got a hidden card with Master Yi. Wink, wink. It's not Zhonyas. So when we let's pretend that the opponent is completely tapped out, so they won't have anything to respond with except for the hourglass. We'll play our Icathian Rain, and the 6 triggers go on the chain immediately, right? So one thing that you can do with a Icathian Rain here to kind of force to play around this Zhonya's hourglass is actually to put one trigger here, and then we're gonna go ahead and put lethal triggers here. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't really matter too much. 4, and then we're gonna go ahead and put our last trigger, or our first trigger that resolves last, on the first mate. And we're gonna go ahead and resolve this in order. And you'll see why that this is important. That this last trigger, or the first to resolve, is actually on the first mate. So we'll resolve this now. We're gonna go ahead and resolve our first trigger here, and we're gonna go ahead and mark 2 damage on this first mate here. So yeah, that has 2 damage, but it lives. And now we're gonna go ahead and deal, or go ahead and resolve our other triggers for the Icathian Rain. We're gonna go ahead and resolve our fifth trigger next. So we're gonna go ahead and put 2 damage on this Master Yi here. We're getting the same problem. Let's go ahead and put that there. So now you see the 2 damage marked here. So now we resolve 2 triggers here. And now we're going to go ahead and resolve this fourth trigger, which means we're going to put 2 more damage on the Master Yi. And now before this third trigger resolves, the one that would kill the Master Yi, the opponent will have the opportunity to react with a card, and you will be able to, and the opponent can use their hourglass here to make sure that the Master Yi lives. At least that's what they think is going to happen, right? So so the way that gears work like this, they resolve immediately. So there's no reaction to reacting to this hourglass. It just happens and it resolves immediately, just like units, but that's not important here. Opponent has flipped up an hourglass. So the way that hourglass works is that let's read it out loud. The next time a friendly unit would die, kill this instead. Recall that unit exhausted. So any unit, including this first mate, if this first mate were to just somehow die, is gonna trigger the hourglass, right? So you can actually just this is a window for you to go ahead and play Stupefy, targeting the first mate. Now the first mate is actually, instead of being 3 might, he's actually just 2 might now. He's just, yeah, he's 2 might now. So now that he's 2 might, he's just dead. He's dead because he's 2 might with 2 damage. So he's gonna die. But because he died, the hourglass triggers, right? So now that that's happened, all of this is wiped off. The damage is wiped off, but actually this is still targeting that, and it's still 2 might. So now this Icathian Rain trigger will resolve. It's going to deal 2 more damage here. And now that it has 6 damage and Yi has 6 might, Yi will die. And now this is missing a trigger. This doesn't really matter here. And Icathian Rain now uh, will deal 2 damage to this. Our last trigger that's still attached to it will deal 2 damage to the first mate. And since the first mate is still 2 might from Stupefy, uh, it will die. And it's still 2 might because getting recalled doesn't change its might. It just puts it back in the base. So this was kind of a longer example of how we can play around Hourglass and use reactions and use chains to our benefit. And if you really understand how these work, and you know how to play these situations, it can go very well for you. Or if you don't know how these work, you can get taken advantage of very quickly. So that's why it's very important to, you know, understand how each of these work and how priority works, how the game works fundamentally. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead, leave a comment. I know there's a lot. You're going to have to go ahead and replay. Please, please, please go back. If you don't understand something, please rewatch it a few times before asking questions. You can ask me and or any of, you know, there's a lot of people who know that how these rulings work. Just go ahead and maybe leave a comment or ask in the community server, or there's a lot of knowledgeable individuals. But yeah, and please go ahead and share this with all your friends that are going to Houston regionals, because what we don't want is to go to regionals and there's a 30-minute judge call where the head judge is called and the player is arguing about how reflexive triggers work and why can't they save their unit? Why do they have to kill your own unit? Blah 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 blah. Is going to be really fucking annoying if each round is 90 minutes. So please, 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 really try and understand these concepts, and please, because we want to have a great event. Everybody wants to have fun, and it's not fun to have 90-minute rounds. So please go ahead and spread the word. And thanks for watching. Oh, and don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. It means a lot. It would mean a lot to me if you guys helped out. So thank you. Have a good night or morning or whatever time. Peace.